that my clay is centered, I'm gonna move on to the next steps in wheel throwing, which are opening, widening, compressing the base, and pulling a basic cylinder. So, my form again is centered. My wheel speed is still on high. So, again, elbows anchored, clay wet, hands wet. Put my thumbs directly in center. And I'm gonna just push directly down. Now notice again, my elbows stay down. Now I'm gonna turn off my wheel. I'm gonna use my needle tool to do a needle tool check. I wanna make sure I have enough clay at the base so I'm able to trim the form. And that also I don't cut through it when I'm cutting it off of the wheel. So I'm gonna take my needle tool, put it into the interior. It'll stick right like that. And I'll put my finger so it's touching the bottom of the floor that I made with when I opened this. And I'm gonna lift out. So that's telling me right there, that's how much clay I have. That's pretty good. That's a good amount of clay. I don't wanna have, let's say, this much clay, way too much. I don't wanna have this little clay. If you've opened it too far and you only have this much clay, you should probably cut the piece off of the wheel and start again. Because the likelihood is that when you cut the piece off of the wheel, you'll wire cut through the bottom. So, needle tool check is important. I encourage you to do this every time you're throwing. So I'm gonna turn my wheel speed back up. I can close that little hole with just my finger. So again, my hands, elbows are down to my legs. I'm gonna put my left hand in. My fingers are touching the bottom. My right hand is gonna go over. And all I'm gonna do is pull straight back to me. So I'm pulling back to the desired width I want this cylinder to be. Now what I'm gonna do is called compressing of the base. Compressing of the base is very important, although it might seem like, why am I wasting my time? The compression of the base is so important because later, after bisque firing, if the piece has not been compressed well, you may have what are called S-cracks, which are small cracks that are in the shape of usually an S, and they occur because of non-compression. So compression I can do with a sponge, so I can hold it very tight in my hand and put pressure to the interior of this and flatten it out. I want it to make sure all the clay is compressed, flat, that I have a nice right angle. What I also like to do is use this tool. So when I use this tool, I only need to use it on the right side because the wheel is spinning. I am a right-handed potter, so I will put this tool, the right angle, to the edge here. So I want it to have because I want the interior shape of this to have a right angle. And so I'll put pressure in. And notice that I'm not putting the tool in like this because it would gouge it. I'm actually putting it in at an angle. Once the base is nicely compressed, this is the time I'm going to turn my wheel speed down to about half speed. Right. Now I'm going to start my process of pulling. I again am right-handed. My wheel is always spinning counterclockwise, and I'll always be pulling at approximately, again, if we look at the wheel head like it's a clock, at about 4 o'clock. Right now, I have a shape that has a slight undercut here, wider area here, and then it directs in again. For some beginners, this is a little bit tough to be able to pull. So what I recommend is to put your hand on the inside, your sponge on the outside. And I'm gonna put pressure with my sponge and move up as I'm pushing in, just to create a little bit more of a straight wall. Okay. Now when you pull clay, I want you to look at this as two separate steps. The first step is indentation at the bottom. I'm indenting the amount of clay that I would want to pull up. And the second step is pulling. The reason why I'm saying it's two different steps is because I'm trying to have students avoid doing pushing and pulling at the same time. And I'll show you an example of what that'll look like. So, my inside hands go to the interior bottom, just the fingertips. Fingertips opposite on the outside. I'm going to indent, pause, holding that pressure. And now I'm going to slowly pull upward. And after every pull, I will do what is called compressing the rim. It's two fingers, my left hand, thumb, index finger, around the piece. Take my index finger on my right hand. So I'm putting a light squeezing pressure with these two and a downward pressure with the top finger. It's gonna keep my rim nice and level as I pull. So I'm gonna do that again. I'm gonna wet the piece, wet my hands. So notice that what I'll do is I'll hold the piece with my left hand, fingers interior and exterior, and I'll squeeze water over my hand. The water will stick to my fingers and will travel down the sides of the clay. Okay, so I have my fingers in, elbows down, fingers opposite, indent, pause, and start pulling upward. Notice the concentric circles that form on my piece. They are telling me that I am pulling at a good speed for what my wheel speed is. So if my wheel speed was going faster, I may be able to pull faster. If my wheel speed was slower, I'd have to pull slower in order to maintain those concentric circles. So again, two fingers, one on top, compressing of that rim. All right. Now I'm at a point where I can't keep my elbow down and my hand all the way in. So I'm gonna need to pick up my arm, keep it close to my body, and put my fingers in. Fingers opposite, indent. Slow off the rim and compress my rim. Now, if I really love this cylinder and I don't want to pull it anymore, probably can't, there's not enough clay, I'm going to make sure that I get all of the water out of the inside of the piece. So while the wheel is spinning, take my sponge. A lot of students find this very nerve-wracking, and they will choose to do it when the wheel is not spinning, and you will destroy the piece more doing this when the wheel is not spinning than when the wheel is spinning. So all the water is out. If I bumped it in any way, I could re-steady it. I am now going to use this tool. So notice it has a straight edge and a slanted edge. I'm going to take this slanted edge. And I'm gonna line it right up against my piece. And I'm gonna start cutting down. I'm gonna cut away that excess clay. I'm gonna do this till I hear it hit the wheel head. Now I'm gonna use my needle tool and I'm gonna slide it underneath this little mass that I cut. Stop my wheel. Cut and remove. Now I'm gonna take this tool again and I'm gonna give this a slight undercut. You can clean that up. Now remember, you're going to be trimming these pieces, so I mean you can do a little bit of cleanup, but overall you're still going to be trimming them. I'm going to put water on the front of the wheel head. Take my wire, and I don't need the whole wire. I'm going to actually kind of wind it in. My fingers down, and I'm going to slide the water underneath the piece. I could do this 1 or 2 times until it moves. I'm going to make sure that I dry my hands thoroughly. Hold my hands very lightly. It's like I'm picking up a baby bird. And that water will allow me to pick it up and put it off to the side.